Hello, my name is Steve Lemare. I have selected a paper that was written by Charles L. Cohen back in 1983 titled Love and Labor: What Drove Puritan Work. When people hear the Puritan work ethic, they often picture grim discipline: work hard because God is watching, or you'll be punished if you don't. But in Charles L. Cohen's 1983 article, The Saints Zealous in Love and Labor, the story is more philosophical and more personal. Cohen argues that Puritan work wasn't powered mainly by fear, it was powered by conversion, and especially by a love for God that flows from faith. Cohen begins by noting that Puritans openly described the godly life as demanding, something that should look visibly different from ordinary life. Puritan preacher John Preston, for example, urged believers to show your grace by doing more than others. The expectation wasn't just private belief, it was energetic, sustained activity. Here, Cohen's key point. Puritans believed that people who weren't spiritually renewed could not keep up real obedience for long. They might try for a time, but their motivation would fade and sin could accumulate. When changes a person's capacity and motivation is conversion, the Holy Spirit's regenerating work that reshapes the heart's direction. Cohen calls this kind of psychology of work because Puritan writers describe two different engines for obedience. One is fear driven. Puritans couldn't speak vividly about divine wrath and what they called servile fear, fear that might push someone towards outward compliance. But Cohen stressed that Puritan pastors did not treat fear as the best or lasting motivator. The stronger engine, they insisted, was love, a love that grows from faith. Cohen highlights a line that captures their logic. The regenerate man's obedience grows chiefly from a love to God, from such love as grows from faith. In other words, the Puritan chain runs faith equals love, love equals work, echoing Paul's language about faith which worketh by love. Cohen's conclusion ties this together. Evidence of God's love motivates the believer to work, and faithful work can deepen assurance. So, in their pastoral logic, love and labor reinforce each other. That makes the work ethic less about social control and more about the inner spiritual feedback loop shaped by faith and affections. One strength of Cohen's approach is that he refuses to reduce Puritan labor to economics or discipline alone. Still, a limitation is that he relies heavily on prescriptive sources, sermons, and theological ideas, which may not always match everyday practice. That's where my other readings add helpful nuance. Francis Bremer, in 2014 article, shows spiritual testimonies could function not only as admission tests, but also community edification. Karen Rogers Stokes in 2016 wrote a paper that highlights how conversion narratives can be complex and varied, not uniform patterns. And Michael Winship, back in 2014, even dictated the debate whether some churches truly require conversion narratives for membership, suggesting practice differed by place and leadership. Finally, Sarah Paulicki in 2022 pushed the conversation outward, showing how ideas about labor and grace operated within colonial relationships between Puritans and Native communities in Massachusetts. That reminds us that work language could carry social and cultural meanings beyond private spirituality. Dan Walden, in 2022 paper, likewise illustrates how Puritan religious ideals interacted with lived experiences and social boundaries. So, Cohen gives a strong framework. Puritans linked sustained labor to authentic faith, not mainly because terror drives people to work, but because faith produces love and love produces disciplined action. At the same time, later scholarship helps us read Cohen carefully because Puritan experience was not identical everywhere, and the meaning of labor could shift communities and contexts.